Okay. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
I know, this is so weird. I know. But, okay, so first of all, I wanted to set the scene of where we're at up until this point. And so I'm going to give just a little bit of background knowledge. So Lynn, your 6th grade ELA, and Chris, your 5th grade ELA. And so we were looking at possibly restructuring some small group work and using the data that we have for decision making. And so the reason why Lynn is here is because we're using her as a model because this was some of the work that we had done last year. So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the work that we had done up until this point last year? So.
Well, I just noticed, like in the classroom, I was having trouble. I could see that kids needed help. Like I knew where our weaknesses was and what the data said, but it seemed like I never had any time to help them, except for maybe a study hall. And some of the kids who went to band and vocal then weren't able to get help because they didn't have the study hall. So I wanted to try something different with my small groups to try to incorporate a time where I could allow for that reteaching, I guess, of a skill or going over a skill again with a student. So that's where it started. And I guess between Jessica and I, we kind of brainstormed some ideas on what I thought kids needed to work on. So we thought writing, and that's how we came up with the writing station. And we thought vocabulary, that's how we came up with the vocabulary station. It was just looking at our weaknesses and what we wanted to build to get stronger in. So,
Okay.
strategy practice, I mean, because every week we have a different strategy that we work on. This week you got to see cause and effect, so yeah.
Okay, and so one of the things, because I was covering your class, we set up the video tape, and on the iPad that we're using to record right now, I have the students kind of capturing what the students were doing. And then on this video recorder, I captured kind of what Lynn was working on with the small group. So I kind of thought that we could watch it together and have a conversation about it afterwards, and we don't have to watch the whole thing, but maybe just a portion of it. So sorry, this is the best mode of video I have.
He was not wanting to be in front of that camera.
Oh, is that one?
Yeah. Nicholas, come here, and then I pulled him in again.
Fast forward a little bit. Okay.
Seems like a long transition, doesn't it?
Okay, so I'm going to pause it right here because you have a group of how many kiddos?
There's usually 4 today. I have Perry Luke back there. I don't know if Perry Luke was lost. I don't know what Perry Luke was supposed to be doing.
Okay.
He usually, I think, is with Julie, but he was kind of just roaming around. I said, get a piece of paper.
Yeah, right. So I guess my first question is, how did you decide that these were the kids that you were working with on this particular day?
They were the kids who, like, their data results on Iowa assessments or math scores were a little bit lower than where we expected them, and their Lexile level kind of fit together, so I put them together in a group.
Okay. And so what I heard you talking about is kind of some keywords within cause and effect. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the lesson that you were working on this particular?
Yeah, we were just trying to find cause and effect in a reading passage, and a lot of times it's signaled with clue words. kids probably would need, even though I taught it to the whole group, I thought these kids would need a little bit more guidance on it, so that's why I pulled them back today. Because it was a rather long passage too.
Sure.
I didn't know if they'd get it read on their own either, so.
So this is, you've already taught this to the whole class,
Mhm.
but saw that maybe these kids might be struggling a little bit more with it, and so kind of choosing some of those key vocabulary words to focus in on within this conversation to just one more exposure.
Well, I do have a question. Was it a reteaching of that same story, same material, or was it different? It was
It
different.
was different material. Yeah, it was just basically, I taught to the whole group, talked about the clue words, and these are the kids that often are off task when you're in a group of 20. So I thought it'd be wise to pull them together and go over those clue words again with them, talk about what a cause is and what an effect is. And
So how did you select the material that you used with that small group?
we just look for it. We just found a passage that a lot of times in your table of contexts, it'll say if it works on a certain skill, and this one said it worked on cause and effect, so we chose it. Cindy and I work after school to do that a lot.
So you're kind of focusing more on the skill as far as what your students' needs are within the small group.
Right.
And we had kind of put together that format to see where the kids are at,
And this particular group was working on strategy practice today, so it was the skill that we worked on this week. So
So
the
that's
skill
what
that I'm being
went with
that I'm
the
teaching is the
basal
basal.
reader.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought from when I looked at the
Yes.
basal reader over one of the kids' shoulders. I thought perhaps it was the same skill,
Right. And
which
then,
made sense.
right. And then next week, like when they do the work on the computer for the strategy practice after we talked about it, if they're still struggling with it, then they'll come back and talk to me individually about what they struggled
Like
with.
you
And you
did
saw
today.
that with
Yep.
Mean Ideas.
Yep.
Yeah.
From last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm recording, so you're gonna have to move. I'm recording back there. Sorry about that. Okay, so
You want to be the star of the show.
I guess so.
Backside.
So, you said it is the material that you're teaching whole group, and so how do you determine which kiddos you pull within that small group? I'm assuming that it's based on the formative assessments that you're doing with that. Would that be?
More, sometimes it is. Like what she saw later was more on the formative assessment. Like I saw the kids who struggled on Main Idea, and I pulled them back to my desk individually later. But this was just because I see that these kids are off task more, and their scores are lower in general on standardized tests. So I just want to give them a little more guided reading, more scaffolding on the skill that we're working on this week.
Oh, okay. So kind of a little
So
bit
it's
of.
kind of the same group usually, except for when you do the one-on-one
Yeah, and then
material.
what you're talking about, the formative assessment data I look at, and then it could be anybody I call that. Like,
Sure.
you know, it could be a student who's usually very high, but they've struggled on this particular skill, so I call them back and I work with them on that skill.
And is it always one student at a time that you pull back, or do you pull, like if you see that 5 of your kiddos missed this piece within the formative assessment, then you might pull that group back?
Yeah, sometimes I pull 3 or 4 at a time, and we talk about the same questions, like if they miss the same questions. And sometimes I don't, though. If I think that the student needs individual attention, I pull them individually too.
So you really have a lot of flexibility in your schedule to pull the kids that you feel like really need the extra work.
I do. It's helped a lot to have that extra time period scheduled into the day. And usually I find somebody to pull to help that needs help. And if I don't, if there's no particular person, or if I've already helped all the kids, then what I do is I'll walk around and I'll look at what they're doing, kind of like you did at their desk, and kind of give some input then too. So there's never a wasted moment, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So how would you say you provide valuable feedback to your students?
I guess I have looked at their assignments. A lot of times in the past, before I implemented these groups, like I would gather their papers and I would spend a while checking their papers, and they wouldn't get feedback right away. In fact, by the time we got the papers back, it would be like we have to reread the whole thing to actually, you know, give proper feedback. But I think this way they're getting feedback in a more timely basis on the skill that they've struggled with. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And so the way that, talk to me about the papers versus what you're doing now. Is it the classroom that's helping?
Yeah,
with
the Google Classroom has helped me a lot with just being quicker at providing that feedback, because before I would have to take all those papers home and grade them by hand, and it's a paper shuffle, and then you have to find the time to hand them back to the kids, which takes another amount of time out of their day. And now all that data is collected on the computer in one spot, which I love, and the computer will check it for you, especially if you do a multiple choice question. But if it's an essay, you still have to check it. So it's a lot quicker for me, and the data's right there, and I don't have to hand those papers back and take that time out of my day.
And correct the papers as far as that. Okay, and so I guess we already talked about this question a little bit, but so how do you use the data collected from your students? So you were talking about maps. Were you talking about maps data that you've used? You've talked about formative assessments. You've talked about kind of just sometimes kiddos who are harder to engage maybe in a whole group setting. Can you talk to us a little bit more about maybe how you put the MAPS data to work for you in the classroom?
Yeah, the MAPS data I use mostly to get my groups, to organize my groups initially. And then those groups haven't changed a whole lot, but there has been one or two that have floated from like a lower group to a higher group, because you can just see that they're moving faster than the kids within their group. And then most of the data comes from the week before. Like, we have the strategy practice, we call it, and that's what I look at to see if the kids are struggling on a skill. It's like the formative assessment. And then the next week is when they get help on that skill, then when they come back and see me individually. And if it's a whole thing, like there's more than just a few kids struggling, we'll just put it back in place of paired passages. We'll put that skill back in the rotation of small groups again. So we take out the paired passage for the week, and we like work again on that particular skill that the class struggled with the week before.
So what I hear you saying, I think, is that you allow flexibility within like the structure of your week to address those student needs as you feel are necessary, and also the flexibility of moving kids from one group to another group. So you might see that some kiddo is moving faster, and it's okay to move them to a different group, and we want to have that fluidity between those groups because we want to best serve our students. The small group activities. How did you choose the small group activities?
Well, again, I looked at our Iowa assessments data and looked at the, Chris knows what this is called, because item analysis of it. And I could see that students struggled with integration of knowledge. So I thought maybe a paired passage would help them to integrate knowledge from one passage to another. So that's how I came up with paired passages. And then the vocabulary, our kids are usually weak on maps and vocabulary. So we also have the, is it the A reading that has a lot of roots and things on it. So we thought maybe we should incorporate the vocabulary, plus it was a school initiative to incorporate Fry sight words. So there, it came about a vocabulary group. When I talked to you, you mentioned, well, what about the strategy you work on each week? You work on a skill, and I thought that's a great idea. We should put a strategy group in. So that's how we came up with the strategy practice. And the writing, kids always need work on writing. So we write a summary every week about the story that we have read the week before. And
I did ask the girls, that I had last year. I said, now, did she tell you what to do, how to do it? Do you know what the format to follow, and you'd given them that right at the beginning. What would you do for this kind of a story,
Yeah.
Was it fiction or nonfiction?
It was fiction.
Yeah.